Good evening. Good to see everyone. Glad to be here this evening for us to look into the Word of God. The book of Isaiah is often neglected by those who claim to follow God. I don't know if it's because maybe it's a little bit longer than most books. It's probably because there is so much figurative language, and people in America kind of not used to figurative language, and it thus becomes difficult for people. But as I've studied the book, I believe it has so much background to help us understand the New Testament. And the imagery in Isaiah, hello pretty girl. My goodness, she's going to get domino here. Bailey, go boil some water. You feeling all right? Good. The imagery in Isaiah is beautiful. And yet for a lot of people, it is like a stumbling block because they just skip over it. Well, I don't know what that means. And so they miss the beauty and the foundation for a lot of things that are written in the New Testament. It's more quoted than any other prophet in the New Testament. And there's a reason for that. It supplies a lot of the background for the New Testament, and especially for the book of Revelation. No S on it. It's just a beautiful book. And I want us to look tonight in chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11. All right, let's begin with the first verse. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse. All right, who is Jesse in the Bible? That's the first thing you got to figure out. Who? David's father. So there's going to come a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Now, I got to tell you, the first time I read that, I thought, what in the world? What does that mean? Well, keep reading. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. Now, him is a pronoun that refers back to a noun in the first verse. Who is he talking about here? We got to know who him is before we know what he's talking about. The branch, right? There's going to grow a branch out of Jesse. And what's he say about the branch? And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding. The Spirit of counsel and might. The Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. Now, a lot of people in the Jewish religion, when they thought about the Messiah, they thought about somebody riding in on a white horse and taking out all their enemies and setting up a political empire like they had under David and Solomon. That's what they were looking for. But now, look how this describing, we're going to find out this is describing the Messiah. You don't see anything like that. That was their misconceptions. And that's one reason they hated Christ. He didn't fit their preconceived idea of what he was supposed to be. So they rejected him. And a lot of people reject Jesus today because when they really start studying about Jesus, he's not the Jesus they have imagined all their life. Verse 3, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge after the sight of his eyes. What did Jesus say? Do not judge according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. You always hear people quote Matthew 7:1, judge not. You never hear them quote that one, ever. Even in the church, you don't hear it. Judge righteous judgment. Matthew 7:1 is not saying to never judge. It's saying don't be impartial in your judgments, what it's teaching. Because you have Matthew 7:1 and then Jesus saying judge righteous judgment. They say, well, that means never judge. Well, that contradicts judge righteous judgment, doesn't it? Of course, they don't care when things contradict. They don't have to answer. He shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of ears. You know, a lot of times we see somebody do something, and here we go. Wonder why they did that. Wonder what's wrong with Bailey. Why? I don't understand. And if you went and asked him, why did you do so-and-so, he might say, well, I had a headache. I didn't feel well that day. I'm sorry I offended you. Now get over it. You know, a lot of times we judge people for just what we see. The Lord looks not on the outward appearance. The Lord looks on the heart. That's what was said when they chose David to be king. He was just a little old ruddy-looking guy, and people thought, he's going to be the king? I know a lot of people tougher than him. He's going to be king? And that's when they were told the Lord doesn't judge like man. He doesn't judge on the outward appearance. He judges on the heart. Verse 4. With righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. All right, now think about Matthew 5:3. The longest recorded sermon of Jesus in the Bible. He's talking about people in his messianic kingdom. And he said, blessed, Matthew 5:3, blessed are the poor in spirit. Verse 5, blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. They're going to receive the good things of this life. And so this person, he's going to judge the poor and reprove with equality the meek of the earth. And then look at the last part, and he shall smite the earth. Why would Jesus smite this planet? It's not the planet. Earth refers to the people of the planet. The people that are not poor in spirit and meek. The proud, the exalted, the worldly. What's he going to do? He is going to smite them with the rod of his mouth and with the breath of his lips, and he shall slay the wicked. Okay, how are you going to hurt somebody with the breath of your mouth? Unless you didn't brush your teeth. You know, how are you going to do war with somebody with the breath of your mouth? How are you going to fight with somebody with a rod sticking out of your mouth? It's clear this is what kind of language? Figurative. It's clear. You don't smite people with a sword coming out of your mouth. That's, you know, and you read things in the book of Revelation, and I've had members of the church say, well, when is this going to happen? And I just tell them, it ain't ever going to happen. Not the way they're thinking. They're thinking literally, and it's hard for us to get off of that path. This is figurative. All right, what do we learn? Well, last week we studied verse 1, and we found from Zechariah 6, 12, and 13 that the branch is the Messiah, and he is going to rule over his people, and at the same time he's ruling, he's also going to be their high priest. Okay, now there's a problem with that. What tribe did Jesus come from? Judah. To be a high priest, what tribe under the Mosaic covenant did you have to be from? Levi. Those two are not the same tribe. You cannot put that together. Of course, the atheists and agnostics and people like that say, well, that's a contradiction. No, it's not a contradiction. Under the new covenant, not under the old covenant, he couldn't be a priest under the old covenant. He could not be, because he wasn't from the right tribe. Under the new law that he brought to man, he's going to be a high priest, and he's going to sit on his throne. Now, Zechariah 6, 12, and 13 says he's going to build his temple. Well, we looked into that, and we found out the temple is talking about the church. Jesus is going to rule from the right hand of God, build his church, be a high priest to his people. That's a beautiful passage of comfort. And that's what we learn from verse 1, and we talked about that a little bit last time about the high priesthood of Jesus. And we asked the question, when is Jesus high priest? When? Right now. Right? Hebrews 3:1 says he's high priest. Okay. Zechariah 6, 12, and 13 says the same time that he's high priest, he will also sit on David's throne. So if he's high priest right now, he's sitting on David's throne right now. Now, how hard is that? And yet, millions of religious people take all these passages out of their context, and they say that means that Jesus is going to come back during the millennium, come to Jerusalem, sit on the earthly throne in Jerusalem, and rule the world for 1,000 years. That's what they think the reign of Christ is. You call those people, well, you can call them a lot of things and not be nice, but the nice name is, besides false prophet, the nice name is premillennial. But if you look at these passages, why would you, if Jesus is ruling on David's throne now, which is what Bailey said, and I agree with him, if Jesus is ruling now on his throne, why would you want to take him off of that throne, bring him down to this cesspool of sin, and put him on a throne over there in Palestine and let Hamas shoot rockets at him? I mean, who in the world, if you just think about it, why would you want to do that? He's ruling at the right hand of God right now. Why would you want to take him down from that, which the Bible says, Ephesians 1:20, that he's been given a name higher than any name that's in this world or that which is to come? Wouldn't that include the stupid millennium? He's got a name higher anywhere in this world or anything that is to come. Why would you pull him down from that and put him back on this earth? You know, when I first began as a religious person to study the Bible, I studied this theory. And even before I met members of the Church of Christ, I thought, this is ridiculous. This is not true. This cannot be true. All right, what do we learn in verse 1? The Assyrians came in because God's people were so evil. God allowed them to come in and take away the northern kingdom. They were the most powerful force in the world. And it looked like nobody could do nothing with them. They say China will have just as many nuclear weapons as we have in 5 years. And if things keep going like they are in this country, maybe just 2 years. Okay, so think about that. Now we will have 2 countries who can annihilate life on earth. Isn't that a comforting thought? Now we'll have 2 countries. And then the Soviet Union's already got almost as much as we do. I mean, how many times do you have to blow the earth into oblivion before you... This is the way the Assyrians looked. It looked like nobody could stop them. They're going all over the earth conquering every empire. God says, I'm going to stop it. The Assyrian army was wiped out. And it was like nothing but a bunch of dead stumps that was left when God got through with them. There was nothing but dead stumps left. All right, you contrast that with verse 1. No life in all these dead stumps from Assyria. They've never come back. Never. But here you have the dynasty of David that has gone into disrepute. Keep your hand right here and look at Amos chapter 9. Amos chapter 9. Now remember, after the northern kingdom was carried into captivity, then a few years later, the southern kingdom was carried into captivity by what great nation? Babylon. And their dynasty is kaput. There's nothing. So look what God predicts here in Amos 9 verse 11. In that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen. You see, the dynasty of David has fallen. How do I know that? Amos 9 verse 11. I will close up the breaches thereof. Now who can do this? Not man, only God. I will raise up his ruins, that shows you what he is, and I will build it as in the days of old. So the house of David, the dynasty of David, and David, of course, ancestor of his father Jesse here in verse 1, that dynasty, it's going to be like a dead stump too. It's going to be like Assyria, just an old dead stump out there. What do you do with them? Well, sometimes you can pull them up with a pickup or something, but it's just a big piece of junk. That's what they are. They're just a dead stump. But out of this dead stump, who could believe a little sprout would come out? They're fallen. They're gone, man. They're out of it. But this little sprout comes out. And this sprout is going to grow and grow and grow. And what's going to happen, God is going to bring a remnant. Now the word remnant, that's not a hard word. It just means a smaller number out of a larger number. God's going to bring a remnant of the Jews who are in captivity. He's going to bring them home. He's going to bring them back to Palestine. And so what looks like it's dead, a little sprout comes out and it begins to grow. Linda had the dumbest looking flowers in the backyard. I mean, they look gross. And I said, Linda, can I just throw this over the fence? She said, well, I paid a lot of money for it. I said, oh no. You paid money for that? If you'll just water it, it'll come back. Well, I didn't believe it. But I started watering it about every 3 or 4 days. And guess what? A little bitty stem come out. Then a little bitty leaf. And now the dumb thing's coming back. Who would have thought? I wouldn't have. But I was a good little boy, and I watered it when she was sick. I didn't let it. It already looked like it's dead to me. I said, this thing's dead. No, it's not dead. I said, yeah, look at it. It looks worse than I do. Let's get rid of this. Just water it. What's coming back? This stump looked dead. And then this little sprout comes out. And then he begins to tell us in verse 2 that this branch coming out of the stem of Jesse, he begins to give us the characteristic. Look in verse number 2. First of all, the Spirit of the Lord's going to be on him. Okay, in Matthew 3, verse 16, Jesus was baptized by John, and the Bible says the Spirit came on him. Didn't say it was a dove. It said like a dove, and remained on him. And the point was, the Spirit of God was with him from then on. So that's what you have here in verse 2. The Spirit of the Lord is going to rest on this branch, Zechariah 6, 12, and 13, that's going to sit on the throne of David, that's going to be the high priest of his people. This branch is going to have the Spirit of the Lord. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding. Okay? Understanding and wisdom. Wisdom is insight into certain consequences of things, and understanding comes from a proper judgment that comes from that wisdom. And who showed that more than Jesus Christ? I mean, they have tried to destroy his gospel accounts ever since the day they were written. They've said everything about them you can imagine, trying to destroy them. But nobody has been able to really tear down the pristine character of Jesus. He had a wisdom that we just can't understand. For instance, in John 2:25, it says, He did not need for them to testify what was in man, for He knew what was in man. John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. All right, He's the way to God. And He didn't say, I tell the truth. He said, I am the truth. How could a person be truth? He is truth. He didn't say, I'm going to tell the truth. He did, but that's not what He's saying here. He said, I am the truth. How could a person be truth? You look at Jesus, you study His life, you see the truth about man. You see how wicked we really are. You see how messed up our minds have become living in this cesspool down here. And I've been living here a lot longer than most of you, but you live here too long, you can't help be tainted by this junk. We're messed up. But you look at Jesus and you look at what He is, what He said, what He did. He's the truth about us. He tells us what we really are. You've fallen short. You're not what you should be. You haven't taken advantage of opportunities I've set in your way for years. You haven't done it. He shows us this. So He shows us the truth about man. He shows us the truth about God. He's the truth about man. He's the truth about God because He's God in the flesh. John 1:14. The Word became flesh. He tells us the truth about God. I used to wonder as a child, what was God really like? And I'd go hear all these different preachers, and I decided, you know what, I need to just find out for myself. Because, I'd go talk to them in their office, and I'd say, these guys, either they don't know, or they ain't going to tell me. It's a big secret who God is. Because these jokers sure aren't telling me. So I decided as a young man, I was going to find out who God was for myself. And forget what everybody in the family said, because everybody in the family had a different view of everything. I mean, everything. I can't think of one thing we agreed on except that we should all hit each other. We agreed that. That's about it. So I couldn't get any help from my family. I couldn't get any help from the denominations. I went to all of them. And boy, I didn't just go and sit there. I'd ask questions. What do you mean by this? What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And about after the second one, they said, well, we know what you are. And I said, what's that? You're a troublemaker. I said, let me tell you something, Pastor. You won't have to worry about me causing trouble here anymore, because I'm through with you people. I didn't go back to that one, but I just couldn't get any answers about God. It was just ridiculous. Jesus is the answer. So he's got this spirit of understanding, this spirit of judgment. You remember after he finished his first recorded sermon, Matthew 7:29, it says, the people were astonished at his doctrine. They just couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe the beauty. 3 chapters, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, have the greatest moral code that's ever been given to man. And I'm including Mohammed, the Buddhist, the Hindus, everybody. He gave the greatest moral code to humanity in one sermon. Matthew 5, 6, and 7. His understanding of man and God is unbelievable because he was God. God in the flesh. It says he will have the spirit of counsel and might. Counsel means direction in something. And he's got the power to go in that direction. He's the great counselor. Isaiah 9:6 will call him Counselor, Prince of Peace. His counsel is the greatest. His lifestyle is the greatest ever offered to man. Verse 3. He shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither after the hearing of his ears. Now, God is over everything. But he has appointed Jesus as judge. 2 Corinthians 5:10, we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. They that have good unto the resurrection of life, they that have done evil unto the resurrection of judgment. Here, Jesus is judge. In Matthew 25:31, he said, I'm coming back. I'm going to sit upon a great throne. All the nations of the earth are going to be gathered before me, and I'm going to separate them as a shepherd separates his sheep from his goats. The sheep I'm going to put on the right hand, the goats I'm going to put on the left hand. Some will go into everlasting life, some will go into everlasting torment. Matthew 25:31, all the way through 46, he says, I'm coming back to earth. Not to set up some ridiculous millennial kingdom. He's coming back to earth to judge. We're all going to stand before him. And Gary won't be able to say, this wife you gave me, she's the one that caused it. I won't be able to say, well, it's the warden. You know, there is no accountability in America. There is no accountability. You can kill someone and not even go to jail in America. It is absurd. We have lost our sense of justice, all because this liberalism and politics has invaded our land, our companies. It's absurd. We will give an account. Romans 14:12. We will all give an account of ourselves to God. Now, you don't have to believe that. It's coming. And God has made him the judge, and he's saying here his judgment's going to be fair. It's not going to just be the way things look. You know, I've seen people do things, and I've thought some pretty bad things about them, and then when I looked into it, I felt a little bit different. His judgment will be righteous every time. And then if you look at verse 5, the righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, faithfulness the guide of his reins. That simply means he is completely consumed with righteousness and faithfulness to God. Respect for God's will. You remember what he said before he died? If it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wills. John 6:38, the Son of Man came not down from heaven to do mine own will, but to do the will of him who sent me. Everything he did was for God's will. That's what these verses teach in 1 through 5. Now, next time, I want us to look at, try to understand verse 4. He's going to smite the earth. So see what you can find out on this. He's going to smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. Who did Jesus ever slay? Can you think of anyone? Well, then what's this mean? That's what I want us to think about for next time, to see if we can come to an understanding of what this means in verse 4. Thank you so much for coming.